Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. What you're seeing here are the Rode Minstrel SEs. They came out in 1998 as a special edition of the very successful original Rode Minstrel. While the SEs may look almost the same as the original Minstrels, they're definitely a very different sounding speaker. So let's go check them out. The SE's dimensions are exactly the same as the original Minstrels, but the plinth on the SE is a little bit deeper at 10.25 inches versus the original's 9.5. For extra stability, the SE comes with an angled brace that mounts between the base and the back of the speaker. The SE also had an optional metal stand which apparently improved their sound to some degree or other. The SE's cabinet came in a real cherry or black ash veneer, and from what I understand, had better internal bracing than the originals. Ports are side-mounted like on the originals, which allow more setup options whereupon the ports can be faced inward or outward, depending on what works best in the given room. They're also a bit heavier than the originals, coming in at around 17 kilograms for the pair, versus the original's 16.5 kilograms weight. The tweeter was apparently the same, but the main driver was completely different. The cone on the SE was different from the original Minstrel, and the driver's magnet was apparently almost twice the size of the standard versions. The main driver also has more damping at the back than the original model's drivers, covering the entire back of the cone from the central spider to the peripheral surround. The crossover in the SE is also very different, evening out any peaks found in the original. The SE's crossover point is 3 kHz, their base resonance frequency is 43 Hz, and their stated frequency range is listed as 33 Hz to 20 kHz, all in keeping with the original. And just like the original, they're rated as having an 8 ohm impedance and a sensitivity of 87 decibels at 1 watt per meter. Power handling is slightly increased with a recommended amplifier power rating between 20 and 80 watts per channel versus the original's 20 to 50 watts per channel. Now, since YouTube videos can't demonstrate to viewers how speakers actually sound, and since verbal descriptors only go so far, I'm going to try to describe the essential sonic differences between the original Minstrels and the SEs. I always find comparison videos to be the most useful. Hopefully you'll gain some sort of comparative understanding of how the original and the SE sound relative to each other. Now, the original model first gained fame by being an ultra-compact speaker that put out a big, high-quality sound on a budget. They were known for having an exciting, lively, high-quality presentation with excellent imaging, and they were surprisingly nearly full range in a small to medium-sized room. The SE retains most of the good characteristics of the original Minstrels, polishing every aspect of them and taking care of any other aspect of the sound that may have been comparatively lacking in the originals. This is to say that the SE is an overall more accomplished speaker. It's more composed overall and very noticeably so. It may sound rolled off to a degree at first if you're expecting a bright performance like on the originals, or if not properly positioned for that matter. But that's not actually the case. Their treble is just significantly more reined in and refined, rather than being a bit bright, unruly, and splashy, as is the case with the originals. The SEs are also more focused, they project a much more tangible body to the performers, and they have an overall fuller presentation. Because they offer much more refined sound, including a bit of a flattening out of the upper mid-range by comparison to the original model, some listeners may find they sound less exciting than the originals to some degree. Similarly, the treble is much more controlled and refined on the SE, so that contributes to a more reserved and mature sound as well. Unlike with the original, the SE's treble never crosses into sibilance and never becomes overbearing to the ear. It's still quite extended, but as already stated, significantly more refined and controlled. The standard Minstrels, by comparison, have a brighter, more strident, and more spitty treble. Their mid-range is lighter and less full-bodied than on the SEs, so that, in combination with the relatively hot treble, gives the originals more perceived excitement. The bass is good, but not as delineated as it is with the SE, and nowhere near as full. It's still good though, and very surprising for the speaker's size, but the SE's bass is just a different story altogether. Here are the main pros and cons of these two speakers in a nutshell. The original Minstrel strengths: they have very exuberant, open sound with good pace, rhythm, and timing, and excellent imaging, and they're surprisingly almost full range. Plus, they're very easy to place. They're not fussy at all in this regard. Their weaknesses, well, they can lose fullness in medium to medium-large rooms, and they can sound a bit bright. They can be sibilant as well, and they can sound slurred. The SE's strength, on the other hand, they're a much more accomplished speaker. They have significantly more refined treble, zero sibilants or slurred S's, and much more meaty, more palpable, and more three-dimensional mid-range. And they have incredible bass control for their size. They have a very full sound, much more so than the standard Minstrel. The SEs can surprisingly get away without a subwoofer, even in a medium-sized room. They have a very grown-up sound by comparison to the more exuberant standard Minstrel. Now, the SE's weaknesses, on the other hand, they may sound a little bit too dull if you're attached to the exciting sound of the standard Minstrel. I feel they require more careful placement than the standard Minstrels as well, with more aggressive toe-in required. The flatter frequency response has perhaps taken away some of the excitement that made the original so appealing. The standard Minstrels and the SEs are both excellent. Technically, though, the SEs are much more accurate and serious speakers. But both the standard Minstrels and the SEs have their individual charms, and that's why I like them both. The standard model is more light and lively than the SEs. Their treble is kind of bright, splashy, and slightly strident, but it's also very fun. Vocals sound more breathy and airy than through the SEs, but treble can get a bit sibilant and slurry, as I said, so bear that in mind. They have exciting mid-range with good pace, rhythm, and timing, although it's less tangible than through the SEs. They have good bass and great imaging, and overall they're a really fun speaker, albeit a bit imperfect and unrefined. The SEs, by comparison, are much more refined and produce a significantly more tangible, full-bodied sound. The treble may be perceived as a bit rolled off, but it's actually just well controlled and doesn't cross into sibilants. Performers are well presented and positioned within the soundstage, with much more three-dimensional body than through the originals. Bass is fuller and has more controlled and defined bass notes than the original model. The SEs have a more mature and very noticeably more audiophile character to the sound. Because of their more refined nature, though, some listeners may find their sound signature to be a bit boring, preferring the standard Minstrels over the SEs because of their more exciting and light and lively nature. Other listeners may prefer the SEs, on the other hand, because of their refinement and more palpable presentation. Ultimately, though, your preference will all depend on your associated equipment and what you value sonically, values which usually change over time with more and more listening experience. So that's all I've got for you right now in my comparison of these two fantastic speakers. Hopefully you found this video useful to some degree or other, or at least found it enjoyable to watch. And if you did enjoy the video, please do me a small favor and hit the like button below, and maybe consider subscribing to my channel for more audio-related content. So take care, everybody. See you in the next one. Bye for now.